peaceful corner of the past. Before we begin our story about cold medieval winters, I want to say a warm hello. Maybe you're lying in bed, ready to fall asleep. Or maybe you're just trying to relax with a quiet story from long ago. Either way, I'm really glad you're here tonight. If you'd like, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always nice to hear from people all around the world who enjoy history together. And if you like this kind of calm, peaceful storytelling, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the next bedtime journey. But now, let's forget the noise of today for a little while. Let your mind rest as we travel back to a time when winter wasn't just cold. It was dangerous. Picture yourself in a village in medieval Europe. The trees have lost all their leaves. The sun hangs low in the sky, giving off a weak, pale light. It doesn't warm the air at all. The ground is hard and frozen. Each step crunches under your feet. The wind blows softly, carrying the first bits of snow. Winter is coming, and for people in those days, that meant one thing, ***, hard times. ***, the cold starts slow. But it stays for a long time, months and months. Soon, snow covers the land. Rivers freeze into solid ice. And in a time before heaters and warm homes, most people could only dream of staying warm. But winter wasn't always like this. In earlier times, the seasons changed more gently. Snow came, but it wasn't feared. Then something changed. The weather became colder, harsher. This time in history is called the ***, Little Ice Age ***, and it lasted from the 1300s all the way into the 1800s. No one knows for sure what caused it, but everyone felt it. Farms failed, animals died, the cold winds grew stronger. One of the worst winters came in ***, 1709 ***. It was called the ***, Great Frost ***. That year, it got so cold that lakes and rivers froze solid. In London, even the River Thames turned into ice. People set up shops on top of it. Some even lit fires right there on the frozen river. It looked strange and amazing, but it was also deadly. Many people froze in their homes. The world outside became like a block of ice. Still, even in the middle of this freezing winter, something special happened. A young man named ***, Isaac Newton ***, was a student at Cambridge University. But when the cold came, the school closed. So he went home to his family's farm. And while sitting near the fire during those quiet, frozen days, he started thinking about big ideas about science, about light, about how the world works. This was when Newton began to create the ideas that would change history forever. It was during this unexpected time at home that Isaac Newton began shaping some of his most important ideas. While sitting near the fire, he started thinking deeply ideas that later became the base for things like ***, calculus ***, and ***, light theories ***. It makes you wonder how many other great thinkers were inspired in the quiet stillness of a long, cold winter. It shows us something important. Even in dark, difficult times, the human spirit keeps looking for light. But for most people living in medieval times, ***, winter wasn't magical, it was something to survive. ***, the rich were lucky. They had warm wool clothes, plenty of firewood, and storerooms full of food. The poor, however, peasants and farm workers lived a much different life. They were the majority of the population, and they faced the worst of it. Imagine waking up in a small, single-room hut. Smoke from the fire fills the air. You can see your breath when you sit up from a straw mattress. Your family lies close, all bundled together for warmth. The cold slips in through every tiny crack. Your fingers and toes feel numb and painful. If there's any breakfast, it's likely a small bowl of watery porridge, or maybe just a dry piece of old bread. The food saved from the last harvest is running low, and you know that the cold months still ahead will only bring more hunger. Even the animals are cold. Their fur is covered in frost as they crowd together in the barn, their breath rising in clouds into the freezing air. As the day goes on, you walk into the snow to gather firewood. The work is hard and painful. Your hands crack from the cold, but you keep going because without fire, your family won't survive the night. You think of your children, their small faces, red with cold, empty from hunger, and you keep walking. This was the daily life for many in the Middle Ages. Every day was a fight against the freezing cold, a fight for survival. But even in all that hardship, people still found ways to stay strong and even find small moments of happiness. Back then, people lived closely with the natural world. They watched the seasons change carefully. And with each season came traditions and special celebrations. So even in the darkest part of winter, there were moments of light. One such moment was the ** feast of St. Stephen **, held every year on ** December 26th. **. It gave people a short break from the harsh winter, and for just one day, society turned upside down. A poor person, even a servant, was chosen as the ** Lord of Misrule. **, this lucky person got to lead a fun and silly party filled with food, drink, and laughter. It was a rare day of fun and freedom in an otherwise tough life. But maybe the greatest sign of hope during winter wasn't the food or celebration. It was something simpler: people, ** coming together, **. In a world where people's lives depended on helping one another, ** family and friendship ** became everything. Now picture a small village blanketed in snow. Smoke curls up from chimneys into the gray sky, a sign that life is still going on. Inside, families sit close around a fire. They tell stories. They share what little food they have left. There's warmth there not just from the flames, but from being together. Neighbors check in on one another. Some bring wood, some bring soup, and everyone does what they can to help someone else survive. The people are tired. You can see it on their faces, but you can also see strength. They've made it through winters before, and they'll make it through this one too. And so, the cold months continue. Snow falls heavier, ice grows thicker, but even in the worst days of winter, hope is still alive. People in medieval times believed deep in their hearts that spring would come. They looked for the first small signs: a little more sunlight each day, the snow beginning to melt, the earth softening again, and when that moment finally came, they ** celebrated. **, one special day marked the end of winter. ** plow, Monday **. It was the first day people went back to the fields to begin planting again. Plows that had been sitting still all winter were blessed. Ceremonies were held, and people felt deep ** relief and joy. ** life had been hard. Very hard, but they had made it. They had pushed through the hunger, the cold, and the worry. The people of medieval Europe had held on to one thing, **, the promise of spring. **, and now that promise was coming true. The snow was melting, green plants began to grow again, and with it came hope. Today, in our modern world full of comforts, it's hard to even imagine what they went through. We have heaters, we have warm beds. We have food at the press of a button. They didn't, and still they survived. They lived with a strength we can barely understand. They stayed hopeful, even in the darkest times. They found joy in small things: a smile, a story, a shared meal. And in doing so, they passed on a lesson. **, the human spirit is stronger than any winter. **, so the next time you feel the cold wind on your face, remember them. Remember their fight, their strength, their kindness. And most of all, remember that no matter how cold or dark life may feel, because that's what they knew, deep in their bones, and it's what helped them survive. And maybe, just maybe, this is the biggest lesson we can take from the people of the Middle Ages, that no matter how long the night or how cold the wind, spring always comes. And with that, dear listener, we gently close tonight's chapter on the freezing winters of medieval Europe. I hope these stories of struggle and strength gave you a new way of thinking about this season. May you always feel the warmth of love, family, and friendship, just like those who lived long ago. And may the light of spring guide you through even your coldest nights. Thank you so much for spending this time with me here in our quiet little corner of history. If you enjoyed our peaceful journey tonight, I'd be so happy if you subscribed and shared this with someone else. There are so many more gentle stories from the past waiting for us, but for now, I'll say good night, stay warm, stay safe, and I'll see you next time for another trip into the past. Sweet dreams. Even as winter grew cruel and unkind across medieval lands, not even kings and queens were safe from its harsh bite. Inside cold stone castles, even the richest families struggled to stay warm. The royal courts had a huge challenge, keeping fires going, food stocked, and everyone safe through the frozen months. They had to store tons of firewood to keep the big fireplaces burning, the only source of heat. Kitchen workers worked day and night to dry meats, save grains, and store vegetables to feed the royal court during the long season when fresh food was rare. Servants stuffed cloth into cracks in the walls and windows, trying to keep the cold wind out. But even the best efforts weren't always enough. In one sad story, a queen is said to have died from the cold right inside her palace. Writers of the time tell us that Queen Elizabeth of Hungary was found frozen in her bed one morning in 1326, a victim of the very walls meant to keep her safe. Stories like these remind us just how deadly winter could be for anyone. But even with all this sadness, people kept going. They held on to whatever joy they could find. For many ordinary folks, one special moment of happiness came during the feast of St. Stephen on December 26th. It was a rare chance to rest, laugh, and eat a little more than usual. For just one day, normal rules were flipped. A regular villager, even a poor one, could be chosen as the Lord of Misrule, the person in charge of the fun. They gave silly orders. Everyone played games, ate, drank, and laughed. Even the rich joined in. For one day, the line between rich and poor faded, and in that moment, everyone was just human sharing a bit of joy. These parties weren't just for fun. They helped people survive not just with food, but with hope. In one story from 1377, two poor families lived side by side in a small village. Their food had run out, and spring was still far away. They were close to starving, but instead of giving up, they came together. They shared the little food they had left. They made a tiny meal on the feast of St. Stephen. That small act of kindness gave them the strength to face the rest of winter. It kept them alive. These little moments of care, giving a warm blanket, a piece of bread, a log for the fire, they meant everything in a world where winter could kill. Helping each other wasn't just nice, it was necessary. It built a kind of teamwork that helped people push through the worst days. But of course, even the happiest moments couldn't stop the cold from coming. The feast of St. Stephen was just one day. Then came the long, gray stretch of January, February, and March. Food grew even more scarce. Stomachs stayed empty, and the freezing wind found its way through every crack. The dream of spring began to feel far away, and yet every year, the people of medieval Europe survived. No matter how hungry, how frozen, or how tired they were, they kept going. Through cold nights, long days, and heavy snow, they leaned on each other, worked together, and never gave up. As the earth slept and the sun stayed hidden, they held tight to the hope that it wouldn't last forever. And that might be the most beautiful part of their story. Through every terrible winter, they showed us what humans are made of. Courage, grit, kindness, hope. They didn't just survive, they showed us how to find light in the darkest season. It's easy to imagine the deep relief and happiness people must have felt when the first gentle signs of spring began to appear. The air didn't sting quite as much, the days slowly grew a little longer, and icicles started to drip under the sun's growing warmth. After so many months of cold, hunger, and darkness, even the smallest signs of winter ending must have felt like a miracle for the tired farmers and villagers who had struggled to get through. One day in particular brought hope, Plough Monday. It came on the first Monday after Epiphany in early January and marked the beginning of the new farming year. Even though winter still held the land in its frozen grip, Plough Monday reminded people that spring would return. You can picture the snowy fields, slowly revealing dark patches of soil as the frost began to melt. Horses or oxen were tied to plows once again, and as each clump of frozen earth was turned over, it was like fighting back against winter, proving that life would grow again. We in the modern world, with our cozy homes, electric heaters, hot showers, and full kitchens, can barely understand what those winters were like. When we complain about traffic in the rain or flights delayed by snow, maybe we should remember the people who came before us. They didn't have warm clothes or full meals. They didn't have medicine or strong roofs, and yet they got through it. Year after year, they survived. They had to dig deep for strength. They had to lean on each other. And they even managed to find moments of laughter, joy, and celebration in the middle of it all. It almost seems hard to believe that people with so little, with cold wind howling outside and illness lurking everywhere, still found hope. But they did, and maybe their strength is still inside us. Maybe we carry it, waiting to wake up when life gets hard. So next time we find ourselves upset about a small problem, too much traffic, a broken heater, or a power cut, maybe we can stop for a moment and remember them. Let's honor the memory of those who braved winters far worse than ours by finding our own strength when we need it. Let's be grateful for what we have, and let's not forget that warmth and love are the best weapons against the cold. So, as we lie in our soft beds, wrapped in blankets, with the lights glowing gently, let's pause just for a second and think of all the people who faced the winter storm with nothing but courage, kindness, and hope. As the new year arrived and Plow Monday passed, people settled back into their usual winter routines. Days stayed short and cold. Nights stretched long and icy. The lucky ones could stay near a fire, in a smoky cottage or chilly manor. But many had no such comfort. For them, winter was a daily battle to stay alive. One of the worst parts of winter was sickness. Back then, homes were crowded and not very clean. With so many people living close together, illness spread fast. Even a common cold could feel like a big problem, causing sore noses, tired eyes, and restless nights. But worse diseases were always around. The flu was especially scary. It hit both young and old. Fever, chills, aching, and no medicine to help. Back then, there were no vaccines. Hospitals were few and far between, and so the flu could sweep through entire towns. In the winter of 1557, a powerful flu spread across Europe. In Paris alone, more than 10,000 people died. Another silent danger was pneumonia. It often struck people who were already weak from hunger or cold. It would fill their lungs with fluid, making it hard to breathe until the person slowly died, like drowning from the inside. Cramped houses gave pneumonia the perfect chance to spread. Entire families could fall sick, sometimes all at once. Children were left without parents. Homes were left in silence. And the royal families. They didn't escape either. Castles were busy places. Visitors came and went. Each new guest might bring sickness with them. Even powerful kings were not safe. King Henry Roman VIII lost his wife, Jane Seymour, after she gave birth. Her death was made worse by the poor cleanliness of the time. Children, especially, were in danger. Cold weather, little food, and dirty living conditions made winter a deadly season for the youngest. Babies born during the coldest months had the hardest start to life. In 1005, hundreds London, nearly half of all children didn't live past their 5th birthday. One sad tradition of the time shows how serious things were. If a baby became very sick, families would tie a small black ribbon to their hand. If the child passed away, the same ribbon would be used to wrap their body for burial. It was a quiet but heartbreaking symbol of winter's cruel toll. During those long, harsh months, survival was never guaranteed. Poor families couldn't count on basic needs like food, firewood, or even a warm shelter. Firewood was precious, and strict rules limited how much fallen wood peasants could collect. Many families burned dried straw or animal dung just to get a bit of warmth. Even their animals, breathing foggy clouds into the icy air, huddled nearby for warmth. Food supplies were almost gone by mid-winter. Families survived on old salted meat, dried peas, and hard bread. The big harvests of fall were long forgotten, and the first green sprouts of spring were still far away. To find anything fresh, people searched the frozen land for plants like nettles, wild garlic, or mushrooms. A typical winter stew called pottage might include peas, beans, a few scraps of pork, and wild onions if they were lucky. It wasn't tasty, but it was enough to stay alive until spring. For many people, even this plain meal was more than they could hope for. Harsh weather, pests, or bad luck could wipe out the food they had. The worst time came in 1315 during the Great Famine, when endless rain destroyed crops all over northern Europe. Writers from the time describe a terrifying scene. People were so hungry, they ate dogs, horses, and even other people. Parents, in their pain, sometimes ended their children's lives to spare them from slow starvation. There were so many bodies, they couldn't even bury them all. Though that famine was one of the worst, smaller food shortages happened often. Most winters, people balanced on the edge of starvation. Winter didn't just affect food. It changed everything. How people lived, prayed, played, and even broke the law. Socially, winter was a time to stay close to family and neighbors. The noisy celebrations of the Yule log became quieter nights filled with crafts and chores. Travel was dangerous and daylight was short, so people stayed indoors. They passed the time by telling stories, singing songs, sewing, or carving wood. They worked with their hands because doing nothing was seen as lazy and even sinful. For those who could read, winter was a chance to enjoy books, but few people owned books. A working man might own a Bible, a book of prayers, and perhaps a fun tale like Robin Hood. Rich people had beautiful, hand-painted books. Often, someone would read aloud so everyone in the home could listen. Winter evenings were filled with stories of brave knights, clever tricksters, and tragic lovers. Tales of King Arthur were especially loved, bringing dreams of magic and honor into homes where the wind howled outside. Not all winter fun was pure. Dice games were popular, often ending in arguments or lost money. Taverns echoed with laughter and the clatter of bones and dice. Some drank heavily to warm up or forget their troubles. Pubs were busy places in winter, a chance to see friends, escape the cold, and enjoy a drink or two. Sometimes this led to arguments, songs with rude words, or even fistfights. But winter also brought quiet thought. The church played a big role in medieval life, and people turned to their faith in the coldest months. With little farm work to do, more time was spent in prayer, giving to the poor, or doing good deeds. Christmas pageants turned into quiet times of devotion. Some people took pilgrimages in the snow to show their faith. Others sat in freezing churches, holding cold rosary beads, thinking about life, death, and the soul. Helping others was considered a Christian duty. The 7 acts of mercy included feeding the hungry, giving drinks to the thirsty, sheltering the homeless, clothing the poor, visiting prisoners, caring for the sick, and burying the dead. In such hard times, even small kindnesses could save lives. Still, not everyone chose kindness. Winter could bring out the worst in people. With more people indoors, tempers flared. Stealing increased. People fought over firewood, food, or just from being stuck together too long. The justice system was slow in winter. Trials were delayed, and jails became crowded and cold. Punishments were harsh, fines, beatings, even death. Yet through it all, people still found ways to smile. They shared laughter and hope where they could. Spring might be far away, but it was coming. By February, the sun stayed up just a little longer. And then came one bright spot in the middle of all the gray, Valentine's Day, on February 14th. Once a pagan festival, it became a day of love and joy. By the 1400s, young men and women were drawing names to find their Valentine sweethearts. It was a time of flirting, friendship, and sometimes marriage. They exchanged flowers, sweets, and homemade cards. Getting a kind message or gift made hearts warm, even on the coldest day. Even winter couldn't freeze love. After Valentine's Day came Lent, a season of quiet and sacrifice. But there was a feeling that the hardest part of winter was now over. Tiny snowdrops and crocus flowers poked up through the frost, whispering the promise that spring was finally near. As the Middle Ages wore on, the seasons ruled every part of daily life, but none more than winter. It wasn't just a time of cold. It was a test. Surviving winter meant you had grit, strength, and strong ties to your faith, family, and neighbors. While snow-covered fields and icicle-draped cottages might seem beautiful today, winter back then was anything but charming, yet this season of hardship shaped a people tough enough to endure. They faced hunger, freezing temperatures, and sickness year after year, and still they found reasons to smile, to hope. Their strength in the face of so much made the spring all the more rewarding. So the next time your train is late or your boots are soaked, think back to them, our ancestors with no heaters or weather apps, just determination and wool cloaks. And remember, every winter they made it through. As you curl up under your blanket tonight, think of those who braved winter's full wrath and came out stronger. Thanks to them, we now enjoy winters with warm beds, hearty meals, and cozy homes. Let their memory be your warmth tonight, and may your dreams be filled with soft snowfall and glowing fires. During medieval winters, even the nobility felt the bite of the cold. While peasants bundled in rags tried to keep warm by smoky fires, the rich weren't much better off in their big, drafty castles. Royalty, too, fought the cold. There's a tale of King Henry Roman, too, burning a chair just to warm his backside, his servants dreading what might happen if he stayed cold too long. Whether rich or poor, winter dragged on, unkind and never-ending. But the people had their small joys. They celebrated feast days like St. Stephen's on December 26th, when peasants could become the lord of misrule, playfully ordering around nobles. Laughter rang out, breaking the gloom. But when the feast ended, the cold returned, and people trudged back to their daily grind, the wind mocking their brief warmth. Still, there was kindness in the cold. Neighbors helped one another, sharing what little they had. One story tells of Dame Matilda of York, who gave her only cloak to a freezing beggar. When asked why, she said, "The warmth of human kindness is a fire that never goes out." And truly, no amount of snow could freeze that kind of spirit. That's how they endured, not just with food and fire, but with generosity and heart. The first green signs of spring weren't just nature. They were proof that the human spirit could outlast even the hardest winter. As we snuggle under our cozy blankets today, we owe our comfort to those who faced winter with nothing but hope. Finally, spring came. The long, cruel winter let go at last. The sun stayed up a bit longer each day, melting snow and warming the land. People stepped outside, blinking at the bright light. Children ran laughing through the muddy fields, chasing crocuses peeking through the thawed earth. Farmers looked ahead to plow Monday, the day after Epiphany, which marked the start of a new growing season. They dressed their oxen and horses in flowers and ribbons and paraded through the village. Church bells rang out. It was a moment of joy and promise. The people had survived again. And with the spring, hope bloomed just as surely as the flowers in the fields. As chimneys started puffing smoke again and snow began to melt, people felt a deep sense of relief. The danger of frostbite and illness faded with the ice. Faces, once tight with worry over survival, now softened into hopeful smiles. Soon, fresh vegetables and fruits of spring and summer would replace the bland dried goods and hard cheese that had kept them going through the dark season. From our modern world, it's hard to imagine how huge this shift was. We might complain about slippery roads or losing sleep from changing clocks, but for people in the Middle Ages, spring meant everything. It meant they had survived another brutal winter, avoiding hunger and sickness yet again. Trees once bare began to sprout leaves again, reflecting the sense of renewal people felt inside. Their joy echoed through old songs and poems welcoming the season. One old English song happily sang, "Loud sing cuckoo, the seed is growing, the meadow is blooming, and the woods are alive again." The happiness in these words shows just how much spring meant to them. We should pause and admire the strength and spirit of our medieval ancestors. They lived through the harshest conditions with courage and the help of their communities. When the sun returned and birds began to sing, they celebrated with full hearts, knowing they had beaten winter once again. Today, as we sit in warm beds and grumble about chilly mornings, we should remember those people. They opened their windows to the fresh air with relief, having survived months of bitter cold. Their determination and joy can still teach us something. Even during the worst snowstorms, people helped each other. Neighbors shared food. Villages organized young men to check on old widows, bringing them firewood and fixing their broken homes. One such widow was Agnes. She was old and alone. Her joints ached from the cold, and she couldn't light a fire. Just when she lost hope, a knock came at her door. It was Tom, a young man from the village. He brought logs, dried peas, and salted meat, all donated by others. As he lit her fire, tears rolled down Agnes's face. For the first time in weeks, she felt warm again. These acts of kindness weren't rare. Even the rich helped. Lady Margaret, wife of the local lord, made sure wagons of food were sent from her castle to feed the poorest. Some nobles mocked her for it, saying peasants were barely better than animals, but she believed in helping those in need. One winter, famine hit hard. Lady Margaret ordered her cooks to make large pots of stew for anyone who came to the gates. The kitchen boys complained, but the head cook Bernard supported her. He used every last turnip and potato to stretch the meals. Hungry villagers ate gratefully, even if the stew was full of chewy meat scraps. For many, it was their only food for days. Even as her food supplies ran low, Lady Margaret quietly sold her jewelry to buy more. Her husband, the Earl, didn't stop her. Though he worried, he respected her kindness. Churches also helped. Monasteries opened their doors to the sick and poor, giving them straw beds and bread with ale. Some even ran simple hospitals. The monks believed helping others was their sacred duty. One monk, Brother William, cared for the sick even though the sights and smells turned his stomach. He fed weak elders and cleaned painful wounds, praying for the strength to keep going. He was grateful he had shelter, food, and health, things not everyone had. Winter treated everyone the same. Whether rich or poor, no one was safe from its cruelty. The wealthy had warmer clothes and spiced wine, but their homes were still cold, and their food stores could run low too. Diseases came in winter, spreading fast. Lady Isabel, a noblewoman, was pregnant during a terrible freeze. She had everything: fire, fur blankets, and servants. But sickness found its way into her room through a maid with a cough. Within days, Isabel was very ill. Her baby was born too early and didn't survive. Soon after, she passed away too. Even kings couldn't avoid winter's reach. King Henry VI, kind and religious, worried constantly about his people during the freezing winter of 1433. His doctors gave him spiced tonics to fight the cold, but he still sank into sadness. Some said God was punishing him, but in truth, it was seasonal depression, a struggle known by all, from kings to peasants. But eventually, winter loosened its grip. Days grew longer, and people began dreaming of spring. They waited for the earth to thaw, for trees to bud, and for fields to be ready again. Spring began with Plough Monday, the first Monday after Epiphany. Villagers paraded through the muddy streets, carrying their plough, faces blackened with soot for good luck, singing loud songs to wake the sleeping soil. Afterward, they feasted, danced, and drank. It was a promise. Winter was ending, and better days were coming. This cycle repeated for all. In grand halls, lords and ladies danced to cheerful music. In small cottages, peasants like Giles walked to their plots of land, holding bags of precious seeds, hoping for a better harvest. Even old Agnes, who had been close to death, now hummed to herself while stirring soup. She had made it. Spring had come again. Yes, winter was cruel. It brought hunger, sickness, cold, and death. But it also showed the strength and unity of the people. When faced with darkness, they responded with kindness, determination, and even joy. So next time you're snuggled under a blanket, annoyed about heating bills or a frozen car window, think of those who came before. They lived without heaters, without stores, without deliveries, and yet they made it through winter after winter. Let their strength inspire us, because if they could find joy in the coldest of seasons, then we, too, can endure and thrive. Modern winter struggles may seem intense, but they are nothing compared to what people in the Middle Ages endured each year. From their hardship, we can learn something meaningful. Compassion, generosity, and unshakable hope are vital for getting through life's toughest seasons. Whether it's a winter storm or a global crisis, let us meet the coming spring with grateful hearts, knowing that no matter how deep the snow, the sun will return. The severity of winter only makes the joy of spring more powerful. As a medieval king might say, let us endure winter bravely so that we may always embrace spring. Your boots crunch over icy snow, your breath hangs in the air, and icicles glint on rooftops. Villages like Wle and Dorb lie quiet, braced against winter's wrath. For most medieval people, this was the reality of winter, not cheerful banquets in warm castles, but bitter cold, constant hunger, and the struggle to survive. Winter hunger was always close. With fields barren and animals scarce, finding food was a daily fight. Food stores ran low, and people lived off bitter herbs and wrinkled turnips. In 1315, heavy storms ruined crops, and many peasants had to eat straw from their roofs or boil leather from their shoes, while still working for their lords. Poor nutrition made people vulnerable to illness. A simple cold could turn deadly. Flu and pneumonia swept through villages. Families huddled together for warmth, but the tight spaces came at a cost. The air, filled with smoke and body odor, bred disease. In 14th century Suffolk, a household of 13 people plus animals shared one tiny room all winter. It's a miracle any survived. Fire was a constant danger in overcrowded towns. A single spark could destroy dozens of homes. In 1212, a blaze in London killed around 30 people on a freezing November night, and many more were left without shelter in the cold. Traveling in winter was risky. Roads turned to mud or vanished under snow. Blizzards blocked vision, and people could easily lose their way. In 1311, Queen Isabella became lost on a journey from Canterbury, wandering for hours in the freezing dark. Even animals suffered. Horses and oxen grew thin on poor feed. Their breath steamed in the air as they hauled wood and goods through deep snow. Frostbitten hooves cracked, but they carried on. Yet even during the hardest times, people found hope. On Boxing Day, then known as the Feast of St. Stephen, churches overflowed with donations, and lords provided meals to their tenants. A tradition called the Lord of Misrule made the day festive, with a commoner crowned as king, leading joyful chaos. Despite the danger, hope remained. People whispered prayers that the sick would survive, food would last, and warmth would return. This winter, if you find yourself complaining about icy roads or heating bills, think of those who came before us. They faced brutal winters without our modern comforts, and survived through quiet strength. We may never know their names, but we can honor their resilience. The freezing weather turned the world into a sparkling ice world. Beautiful, but deadly. Snow blanketed the land under a heavy white sheet. Icicles hung from roofs like knives. Fires burned day and night, but gave little relief. Smoke stung eyes and lungs. In tiny huts, people and animals huddled close, their smells mixing with dung and dirt. A harsh winter perfume. Some couldn't even enjoy this small comfort. Food was scarce. Bellies groaned with hunger. Many survived on rough bread and thin gruel, hoping spring would come in time. No one was safe from winter, not even royalty. In drafty castles, even kings and queens shivered under heavy furs. One Bohemian princess froze to death in her room, a reminder that wealth could not buy safety from the cold. Families often lost loved ones during these months. Disease spread through weakened communities. The smoky air and filth made people easy targets for sickness. Medieval doctors, guided more by superstition than science, could do little to help. Icy roads added to the misery. Only the desperate dared to travel. Merchant carts sat still, leaving villages without supplies. Taxes went uncollected. Even armies struggled. In 1407, Welsh leader Owain Glyndwr defeated a larger English force by using the harsh winter to his advantage. Snowstorms and freezing winds helped his victory become legend. Winters often brought famine. From 1315 to 1317, a wet, cold spring destroyed crops across Europe. Harvests failed for years, leading to starvation. Bread became 20 times more expensive. People ate grass, bark, even dug up graves. Some cities lost up to a quarter of their people. One heartbreaking story tells of a starving pregnant woman caught stealing bread. Refused mercy, she was hanged. As she died, her baby fell from her body, crying on the ground. No one helped, and the child died alone. Finally, in 1318, the weather improved and crops grew again. But the memory of those brutal winters stayed. They remind us of the strength and will of those who came before, and their ability to survive against all odds. And though the crops started growing again, hunger never fully disappeared. Every winter brought fear of food running out, as even small problems could turn deadly. For people in medieval times, winter wasn't just cold, it was terrifying. They always worried if the little food they had would be enough to last until spring. Because of poor nutrition, many got sick more easily. The way people lived in winter, crowded, unclean, and trapped indoors, helped spread diseases like the flu, dysentery, and pneumonia. Breathing in smoke, filled air while huddled together made catching a winter cold dangerous, and what started as a simple cough could quickly kill. Doctors back then didn't help much. Their treatments were often strange and based more on old beliefs than real science. They used things like bloodletting or strong laxatives, thinking it would balance a person's humors. Emperor Charlemagne himself is believed to have died during a harsh winter in 814, despite being treated with ointments and warm cloths. Some say these so-called treatments did more harm than good. When the Black Death spread in the 14th century, many historians think it traveled so fast because winter forced hungry, weak people into packed homes, making the infection easier to pass. The plague between 1348 and 1349 killed around 30% to 60% of Europe's population. In one letter from Pistoia, Italy, a man named Sir Lucar wrote to his brother Francesino about how terrible things were. "I can barely bring myself to write. So many are dead and more die each day. Shops are shut, taverns empty, and the streets silent. The smell of decay comes from graves. I feel our city will soon be empty. Please stay where you are and pray for us." Villages disappeared. The sick were kicked out to die alone in the cold, while others were buried quickly in frozen dirt. The horror left deep emotional scars, and life after the plague was never the same. Winter was especially dangerous for older people, young kids, and pregnant women. Without modern medicine, many didn't survive. Up to 30% of babies in some places died before turning one, often during winter. Pregnant mothers also died from complications worsened by poor diets and cold conditions. One tragic story is about Matilda, daughter of King Henry I. In winter of 1120, she was sailing on a ship called the White Ship from France to England. The ship hit a rock and began to sink. Matilda got into a rescue boat, but when she saw her half, Brother William, still in the water, she told the boat to turn back. Too many people tried to climb aboard, and the boat capsized. Matilda, who was pregnant, drowned. Her father fainted when he heard the news and was said to never smile again. Old people and children often froze to death in their sleep. Even King Arthur is described in old poems as shaking in the cold, his teeth chattering despite being inside a castle. Medieval winters brought not only snowstorms but floods too. In 1216, King John tried to escape enemies by crossing a marshy area in East Anglia called the Wash. A sudden storm and tide swept away his treasure, including priceless crowns and royal items. Days later, he died from dysentery, some say heartbroken over the loss. Winter storms destroyed towns. A record from 1099 tells of a massive sea flood in England that drowned many people. In 1219, another flood hit the Netherlands and killed over 50 people. There were no warnings, no emergency shelters. People had only prayers as icy waters rose. To stay warm, fires were kept burning constantly, but that brought its own danger. In 1132, a huge fire in London, made worse by winter winds, burned churches, homes, and even lead rooftops. Cities made of wood burned quickly, and narrow streets made escape hard. Families were separated, some never reunited. Buckets of snow and water did little against the raging flames, but perhaps the biggest threat in winter wasn't flood or fire. It was the deep, endless cold. No heaters, no warm clothes like today. Cold crept into every home and every body. People wrapped in layers and furs still couldn't escape the damp chill. Arthritis, pneumonia, and other diseases worsened. The cold made even healthy people feel weak. It got into their bones, their breath, their blood. Gildas, a monk from the 6th century, wrote about winter. The nights are long, the days are gray, the wind bites, and the snow covers all. It feels like the world has died. Fires sometimes died out. Smoke stung eyes. People coughed in the dark and listened to each other groan. Cold air froze their breath. Even strong young people moved slowly, like walking through deep water. In those days, there were no vacations to escape the cold, no electric blankets. Surviving the winter was an achievement. People didn't count years. They counted how many winters they had survived, and yet they endured. When food ran low, they ate less. When the fire burned low, they pulled blankets tight. When the nights grew long, they told stories about spring. A poet once wrote, "Through pain and snow, hope shall win." Even in the darkest times, there were small moments of joy. People shared what they had. They sang, they prayed. Some thought they heard angels in the wind. They believed warmth would return. They believed that no matter how harsh the winter, spring was always coming. Goodwill and togetherness brought people closer during harsh winters. The Feast of St. Stephen was the highlight, with roasted meats like geese, capons, and even a boar's head being served with much excitement. Sweet pies full of dried fruits and spices filled the tables, and the wassail bowl, warm spiced cider, lifted everyone's spirits. You could almost hear the laughter echoing in the halls, rising above the cold winds outside. For just one bright day, people forgot the harshness of winter and came together in joy. As the celebrations ended and folks returned home, they took with them the warmth of that day, a little spark of hope against the cold. Knowing they had each other, that they could find joy even in hard times, gave them strength for the long winter ahead. Their hearts were warmed by food, laughter, and community. The feast reminded everyone that even the darkest days would soon give way to spring. Soon, the snow melted, and the frozen ground began to soften. Villagers watched eagerly for the first signs of snowdrop, tiny white flowers peeking through the slush. These flowers meant winter was ending, and new life was on its way. Happiness spread across the land as color and life slowly returned to the gray, frozen landscape. With renewed energy, medieval farmers returned to their work. Livestock came out of their shelters, and farmers hooked up their teams to plows. The first Monday after Epiphany in January, known as Plow Monday, marked the start of a new farming season. Plows were taken out, blessed, and paraded through the fields. Plowmen visited homes, collecting food, ale, and coins for the season ahead. Imagine a tired village gathering to begin planting, faces turned to the lighter sky, tools in hand, ready to plant the first seeds. An elderly grandmother held a child in each hand, teaching them to plant peas as she once learned herself. The little one giggled at an earthworm squirming from the soil, while the older child pushed each seed into place. This was how knowledge was passed down, generation to generation. The grandmother's warm smile promised that the worst was over. As seeds settled into the earth and green shoots appeared, winter finally lost its grip. The cold season gave way to warmth and growth, and spring's breeze carried a feeling of renewal. From today's point of view, it's humbling to consider how strong people had to be to survive medieval winters without modern comforts. Making it through to spring was an achievement, but even in tough times, they found joy and reason to celebrate. Laughter, friendship, and the hope of spring helped them face the darkest days. Maybe the next time we complain about the cold, we can remember those who came before us. Our troubles pale in comparison to theirs, and as we fall asleep under cozy blankets, we can feel proud to carry the same spirit they had, the belief that spring will come again. So, as the light fades and the wind sings outside, picture yourself walking beside those long ago people who conquered winter with courage and hope. Let their strength inspire your dreams tonight. If this peaceful journey through history brought you comfort, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are always more calming stories waiting to ease you into sleep. Until next time, rest well and dream of warm fires and fresh green shoots beneath the snow. Good night.